8th, 2024, and I call this regular City Council meeting to order. I want to thank everyone for being here and joining us, and I would like you all to join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please note for the record that Councilmember Peretti and Cedar are absent this evening. And if somebody would like to move to excuse them.
I would make a motion to excuse both Councilmember Cedar and Peretti.
Thank you. Write these things down. It's been moved by Councilmember Strader and seconded by Councilmember Whalen to excuse both Councilmembers Peretti and Cedar from tonight's meeting. All in favor? Aye. Motion, or any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now we're going to go to citizen participation. The purpose of the public comment period at this meeting is for those wishing to address the council on any matter. It is not intended for debate and discussion with the public. Please state your name and address for the record. And we kindly remind you that your limit for comments is 3 minutes. And first is, and only, is Jackie Strader.
Jackie Strader, 1809 13th Avenue. So my comment tonight is about transaction number 7426 on the consent agenda. The lock systems purchase of cameras totaling $75,805. So on May 26, 2019, Milton City Council approved a contract for $36,115.34 for 7 security cameras for our water system and public works. In January 2022, I noticed a camera purchase on the consent agenda, and I asked, I emailed the mayor and council about the purchase and what was going on with the contract that was approved in 2019. At the time, I was told by the mayor that she had canceled that contract due to concerns about the hardware, and she went on to state that she had worked with the IT department to find an alternate option, and at this time, the cost does not warrant council approval. Tonight, I see on the consent agenda the $75,000 purchase for 3 park cameras and 3 well cameras. This concerns me because I wonder if state and city of Milton purchasing rules were followed for these purchases. It's possible, since we don't have a camera program, they aren't considered one project, but the well cameras were considered a project back in 2019. Also in 2023, in August, the mayor of Fife emailed our mayor asking if you or staff can share information about the security cameras in the parks program that Milton is implementing, to which our mayor replied, we don't have an official program for our park cameras. We add them as funding and time allows. Currently, we have cameras at the skate park, Kemper Playground, and the parking lot at Lower Milton Field. Next up is a sports court at the top of Triangle Park. The cameras are live streamed to the PD, and Lock Systems handles ordering and installation. The only part that appears to be missing from this non-program program is council involvement and the public's involvement. The Lock Systems Services Agreement, the contract that was presented to council, states that distributed wireless or security camera systems are not covered by the contract, are billed separately, and to request a quote. Tonight, there is a lot on the agenda that concerns me financially, but I'm focusing on this one since it's in the consent agenda and could slip by unnoticed. I don't know if it's a violation, how you fix it. We've already spent the money, it appears. But maybe council could say, you know what, we're going to ask more questions and find out if it's actually should be approved. Thank you.
If I could just ask a question, what's the transaction number that you're referring to?
Oh, it's 7427. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, no, it isn't. It's
26.
I'm sorry, I got confused now.
7426.
Thank you.
So that leads us to, are there any requested additions or deletions to the agenda?
I'd like to remove item B from the consent agenda for discussion.
Anyone else? Is there anyone else who would like that topic added to tonight's agenda?
I'm just curious, and maybe it's my hearing or something. You keep turning to the forward, and I don't hear you all the time. What was the item number?
B on the agenda,
So you want to,
section 6.
Marion Osborne on-call?
Yep.
Amendment approval?
Yes.
You want to approve that to the next council meeting?
No, I'm asking for us to at least discuss it.
Okay, I agree.
So that would, if that would go to, I believe, to 6E, would it not?
6B, correct.
We already. Yeah, can we just,
Yeah, I think we can.
okay,
There's no
okay. Then we will move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull an item off the consent agenda for discussion?
That's what I'm asking, to
Okay.
pull that.
So you want to add that?
Well, I want that item pulled until we discuss it. Huh?
The,
B,
the claims.
yes. Gray's Osborne.
but we're already discussing that. So we're talking out of the consent agenda itself.
Isn't that part of the consent agenda?
No, the consent agenda is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah, correct.
Okay, so we're moving on then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does anybody want to make a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion made to approve.
Anybody second?
Second.
So it has been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Hall to pass the consent agenda as presented. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Let's see, that would pass 4-1.
Can I get an inquiry? We pulled item B off of the consent agenda, correct? So what we passed was only item A.
No. Consent agenda didn't concern what Councilmember Strader was referring to.
Yeah.
We're going to discuss,
Did you not pull item B off the consent agenda?
Yes, that's what I was asking for.
Okay. So I,
Fran Osborne.
I know, but item B off of the consent calendar. Right? B, claims approval. So you moved the claims approval to be moved as item E on the regular agenda. That's what I understood.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm not sure about
So what I voted for on the consent calendar was item A because we'd pulled item B.
that's not part of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is the transactions and anything within,
I understood.
correct?
What I heard you say, Councilmember, was Gray and Osborne, which is on the agenda as item B. Is that not what you were trying to pull?
the approval of that contract, right?
So that contract is already on the agenda, so it will have discussion. So you're not talking about the consent agenda, you're talking about the regular agenda.
Yes.
Does that help, Commissioner
stand.
White?
All right.
All right.
So we're moving on.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't understand what it was that you were doing.
So we're moving on to C, or yeah, 6A, I can read. We're moving on to 6A. And on your consent agenda, or on your agenda, which is at page 57, Resolution 24. And that would, and correct? That is, this is the item, correct? So it is so what I read, okay. So resolution 24-1966. And we could have the chief provide a little insight.
Good evening, council. This item is to return a vehicle that we purchased that after having it inspected, we realized that it had more damage than what was reported in the report online, the Fox report. The vendor tried to fix it and it didn't meet our satisfaction, so now they're willing to purchase it for the original price that we bought it from them. So we intend to return this vehicle. Assistant Chief Murray is here to speak to the item. If you guys have further questions, he can step up to the podium and answer them.
Good evening. Yeah, so in July of 2023, as part of our amortization, I hate that word, we were able to purchase 3 vehicles for the amount that we were given. There was a 2019 Ford Explorer from Boyko Motors, which was here in town. We decided to go ahead and go with that. The purchase price was $28,532.24, with total miles on the vehicle is 4,716. At the time, we didn't have to do a competitive bid process. The vehicle came with a cage. It had the center console ready for a radio and the controls, as well as the plastic back seat. The Carfax stated it had minor driver's side damage. We purchased the vehicle. When we took it and had it inspected by our dealer, they found that actually there was extensive damage on the passenger side front, at which times I contacted Boyko Motors, explained to them that their Carfax is not right. I will state to his credit, the owner of Boyko Motors immediately wanted to make it right, asked if he could take the vehicle and have a chance to do the repairs at his cost. We allowed him to do that. He had it for approximately 2 months, made the repairs he could do, brought it back. We had it inspected again, and I had spoke to him that if we can't say that this is safe for our officers, we're not gonna use it. He agreed and said if after the completion of the repairs he does, we're still not happy with it, that he would refund the city 100% of the cost. He had it, he returned it, we had it inspected. We still found items that were deficient for us to safely put our officers in it. I contacted him and stated we would like him to purchase it back, and he agreed, and I just explained to him because we own it that city council has to approve it in surplus. So if you're willing to surplus the vehicle and will vote to do so, he will refund the city 100%.
Thank you. Would somebody like to make a motion before we start discussion?
Discussion first and then motion or not a motion?
Pardon? You want to make?
So make the motion.
Yes, please.
Move to approve resolution 241966, declaring obsolete police equipment to be surplus and authorizing the disposal of the same.
All right.
No, I'm a little confused because I thought we get to discuss these things before we make motions. Clarify any thoughts we have about the process. Is that not correct?
Yeah,
I'll second it.
and then we can discuss. So it has been moved by Councilmember Hall and seconded by Councilmember White to approve Resolution 24-1966, declaring obsolete police equipment to be surplus and authorizing the disposal of same. Councilmember Hall, would you like to speak to your motion?
I appreciate your thoroughness of, spotting the problem, and I did talk to, I think, Chief and you about it at one point, because you guys were really disappointed that it happened. Yeah, good job on the safety of the officers and looking out for the city.
Thank you.
Councilmember White?
I would just like to say that I think that the city is extremely lucky that the dealer has agreed to buy this unit back, because I'm really surprised that the city would buy a used vehicle without inspecting it first. And were it not for the dealership's agreement, we'd be stuck with this vehicle. And that would be quite a large loss to the city. So I would hope that going forward, before vehicles are purchased, that they're inspected first. Because unless it's in the agreement, it's an as-is sale.
If I can speak to that.
Yeah.
At the time that this was brought to us, I'd only been in the job for about 5 months. When it was first brought to us prior to purchasing it 7 months later, I've made the decision that we will not. The city takes very good care of us. We can buy brand new vehicles every 2 years. That's our schedule. These vehicles are under warranty. And regardless of how I got the information or who said this is a good deal, it stops with me. And that was my due diligence, and I've learned. But from this, we are only going to buy new vehicles. So that protects the city, protects everything. But yes, the owner of Boyko was very generous to us. And I appreciate that. And I thank him for that as being a Milton business. But yeah, we're not going to purchase any more used vehicles
Well,
for the department.
I don't think that's the lesson to be learned here. It's possible to buy a good used vehicle if you were going to save money. Just inspect it first.
Yes.
So,
Councilmember Whalen?
Yeah, and I just had a few questions to clarify what the document was telling me. That's why I asked
Oh.
for discussion on it prior to not voting.
Okay.
Now, but I'm not done. I appreciate everything that's happened in this transaction to be able to bring it back and be made whole, with the exception of the time and energy the police department had to put in to recognize that it was a faulty vehicle. I would have concerns working with the individual in the future. I would have concerns that the individual hasn't, what you might say, compensated back the time, energy, and effort the police department had to put into this. It's cost us hours and time, and your time and everybody else's. I'm glad that they stood up and have acknowledged that they let a not safe vehicle. I'm going to put it that way. They don't want it safe. So I'd have reservations again, and I'd be clear with them. In the future, or anybody else would purchase a vehicle from, especially an older vehicle, that we have that right and they have that understanding that they're going to be held accountable for the quality of the vehicle that they send us or take it back with expenses, because it did cost us money to do this. And good find, good work. That is out of our hands.
Well, I have to agree with Councilmember White about, because Tony, you and I had this conversation about that vehicle. I brought the issue up that when I did a check on it, it had extensive damage, but you said it was inspected. And can you tell me what happened with that, or were you misinformed, or what?
Well, when a car dealership brings you a car, I assume that it passes inspection.
Yeah.
And then based on the conversation that we had a closer look at it to make sure that it was consistent. And then we found out that the Carfax report was not accurate.
Yeah, okay.
So that became the issue of like, well, So thank you for going, hey, look at this. And I know
Okay.
you've got extensive experience.
Oh, so it was my due diligence.
Yes, your due diligence, your expertise.
All right. All right, thank you.
Any more comments? If there, so no more discussion. If anyone out in the audience would like to make a comment, you are able to do so. Just come forward and state your name and address. If there is none, then seeing that discussion is concluded, we are to approve Resolution 24-1966, declaring obsolete police equipment to be surplus and authorizing the disposal of same. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now we're on to item 6B, which is the contract for Gray and Osborne, page 61, and we'll go to Director Madden to give us a review of the item.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Before you tonight is a professional service agreement, amendment number 4. It is requesting additional capacity and time within our existing on-call agreement with Gray and Osborne. This agreement was first finalized in 2020. Amendment number 1 added $75,000. Amendment number 2 added $100,000. And then amendment number 3 added another $200,000, bringing the current contract to $400,000. So this amendment before you tonight would add an additional $400,000 of capacity, not expenditure to the city, and it would also add 2 years to the existing on-call. As the city engineer position remains unfilled, it is necessary for us to provide these services to ensure quality control throughout all of our engineering, street, water projects throughout the city. I will note that this contract encompasses all of Gray and Osborne's action with the city, and so of our existing $400,000 contract, over $280,000 of it is passed through, which means that it is paid by development. And most of that can be attributed to Bridge for quality control inspection throughout the life of that project. The recommended action is moved to authorize the mayor to execute amendment number 4 in the amount of $400,000 to the professional service agreement with Gray and Osborne, Inc. for on-call engineering services, increasing the agreed total amount payable to $800,000 and extending the completion date 2 years to December 31st of 2025.
Now, would you rather have discussion first and then do the motion, or would you rather do the motion then have discussion? I can go either way.
First, the motion should come from the table, from the council.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's
And
something
that-
like. oh,
I understand that, but that motion should come from the council. But I have added an additional question. So this is an increase to the budget that we have to account for, additional monies.
Well, there is project capacity and funding built into the budget through our capital improvement projects and our transportation element projects. But this is just capacity to take any billings from Gray and Osborne up to the limit of $800,000.
But we'll be moving money from something else we had forecast to utilize that money for to a new section of utilization of Gray and Osborne for something outside of the scope of what we had discussed, those excesses.
This item before you tonight is just for on-call services. There is no exchange of dollars. It is just capacity to have them provide engineering services to the city.
All right, so we're just anticipating in the future to make those budget adjustments to account for the additional monies to go to Gray and Osborne, if it's needed. Is that how that works?
No budget amendment or adjustments are required to pass this.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question was, where was this money coming from? I didn't see it in the budget. So that was my question about where's the money coming from? So you somewhat, and then the other thing was where, I kind of would have liked to have seen a itemized list of where the money's going, that kind of thing, would have been helpful, so.
Understood. And just to maybe explain this in a different way, this is not a transfer of funds. This request is for an on-call consultant to allow the city, when a request comes, to work with Gray and Osborne as our on-call engineer. So it's not listed as an expenditure, it's an action item.
So where is the $400,000? Where does that come in for the first year, right? And then another 400 the next year?
No, 400 over 2 years is what the request is asking for. And it could come from a variety of places. It could come through pass-through billings. It could come from capital improvement projects. It could come from emerging grants that the city receives over the next 2 years.
Okay. Well, I'm just looking at the last line where it says agreement brings the agreed total amount payable from 400,000 to 800,000. So you just said 400,000.
So our existing contract is for 400,000.
Yeah.
We're requesting to add an additional 4 and 2 years. And I think of this as a not to exceed contract.
Okay.
It's not an agreement to pay them the 400,000. It's entering a contract so they can work with the city up to an additional 400,000 worth of work over the next 2 years.
Okay. Councilmember Strader, would you like to make a motion?
No.
I'd like to make a motion. Move to authorize the mayor to execute agreement number 4 in the amount of $400,000 to the professional service agreement with Gray and Osborne, Inc. for on-call engineering services, increasing the agreed total amount to $800,000, extending the completion date 2 years to December 31st, 2025.
Second.
So it has been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember White to authorize the mayor to execute amendment number 4 in the amount of $400,000 to the professional services agreement with Gray and Osborne Incorporated for on-call engineering services, increasing the agreed total amount payable to $800,000 and extending the completion date 2 years to December 31st, 2025. Councilmember Whalen, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much. It's understood, and we've done this in the past, as to where we forecast what expenditures could be over a period of time. In that period of time, a lot of the expenditures that we will basically guarantee that Gray and Osborne gets is paid by development in a lot of cases. Let me just shorten it that way. And the things that we have to have a safeguard for. We don't have a city engineer to work in this position. If we did, a lot of that would come under their authority as the city engineer. We have to have standby, and we have to have a contract with folks to guarantee that they will work for us and they will be paid. But the majority of this payment, as it has been in the past and will be in the future, is borne by the applicant. Let me call it that way. So a little bit of a risk because we have to pay our bills, and we may have to go after an applicant to make the money back. God forbid the worst happens. But we're guaranteeing they'll be paid for work they're going to do, and the vast majority of those revenues will come from the development, or the reason that we've had to hire an engineer to satisfy a customer. I have a comfort level with this, and we've been doing this for quite a few years.
Councilmember White?
Yeah, I concur. This is just a contract extension, and no money is going to be expended unless work is performed. So, Thank you.
Any other comments?
Just one other question. Where are we in the status of our hiring of an engineer?
We've received a few applications lately. We've did 2 interviews last week. It is still very difficult to find a licensed engineer with a current stamp
Is
in
that
this
because of
market.
Is that because of the wages that we're offering, or?
Well, council approved an increase in wage last year at the beginning of January. And I think that has opened the door, and that's why we're getting applications now. And so we also are working with a consultant firm that will look outside of our local pool of applicants to take it more nationwide.
Okay. My concern is that we're looking at the 400,000 and could we be, spending that money, putting towards hiring a qualified engineer? Do we need to bring that number up so that we can attract more people?
No, I think we've right-sized it with the current market.
Okay,
And I think the applications that we're receiving reflects that.
okay, very good, thank you.
I do have a question. So this 400,000 really is just, or 800,000 is just really the top. They're only billing us for what they do for us, correct?
Correct. This is not a guarantee of payment.
Right, that's what I was saying. So it's whatever work they do. I did read that, so their invoices will come every month. So
Correct.
it's whatever work they do that month, then they will bill us for that.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Is there any other oh, no, go ahead.
Do we take comment from the?
Yeah, I was just about to ask.
Okay. Yeah.
Does anybody out in the audience, do they come up, Jackie? Just be sure to say your name and your address. You know the drill.
I do. Okay. Jackie Strader, 1809 13th. So I have a question, don't know if you can answer it, but so with the pass-through money, if we had an engineer, would we be getting to keep the pass-through money, or do they, so like would a contractor or a developer say, okay, we want to develop in Milton, but they're contracting out all their engineering, so I have to pay for that, where if you got an in-house engineer, it's just part of the, I don't know if it increases costs for the developers by having to contract everything out. I don't know if you understand what I'm
I do.
getting at. Okay.
Yep,
All
billable
right, I'll
hours.
sit down.
Yes, billable rates. And while there may be some additional expenses on labor rates, it's minimal, and it allows the city to move forward with projects. Yes, thank you.
So seeing that discussion has concluded, it was moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember White to authorize the mayor to execute Amendment Number 4 in the amount of $400,000 to the professional services agreement with Gray and Osborne Incorporated for on-call engineering services, increasing the agreed total amount payable to $800,000 and extending the completion date 2 years to December 31st, 2025. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1. Now we're on to item 6C. Which is on page 91, approval for a sole source purchase. And Director Madden, if you want to give the details on that.
Absolutely. This item tonight before you is the request for the sole source purchase of Okanite Underground primary distribution cable. This is a repeat item that was brought forth to council in 2022. This product, the Okanite 15 kV underground primary, is only offered by one company. That is what we have used throughout the rest of these primary cable upgrades. And this purchase of this material will allow us to complete the primary restoration and replacement of the primary cable throughout the dock apartments. We completed 1/3 of this project last year. This has been in the budget for the last, I believe, 4 years. The goal this year is to complete it to 100%, which would take new primary all the way from Taylor Street over to the shopping center behind Safeway. The recommended action tonight is move to approve the request for sole source purchase of Okanite 15 kV underground primary distribution cable in the amount not to exceed $150,000 for this sole source purchase.
I will need a motion to open the floor for discussion.
So move, motion.
Thank you.
Second.
It has been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember White to approve the request for sole source purchase of Okanite 15 kilovolt underground primary distribution cable in an amount not to exceed $150,000. Councilmember Whalen, would you like to address that?
Thank you, yes. A recurring item we see quite frequently, every so many years. We don't buy more than we need, but we have to go back to the same vendor per se. And it fits all of our standards, it fits all of the things that we have done. And it's anticipated that every so often, every 2 years and so forth, we need to replenish the stock so that we can complete our projects. So yes, I'm very much in favor of this.
Councilmember White, would you like to speak on your second?
I don't have anything else to add. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion?
No, actually, I see it's in the budget. I mean, it's clearly marked that we approved it through the budget, so that's good.
The monies are there.
Yeah, the money's there.
Councilmember Strader, you have.
Yeah. How much of this is paid for by the dock? Any of it? Or does it come out of all of the city budget?
The sole source and the $300,000 that has been improved in the budget
Yeah.
is a city expense as a capital improvement for our electric utility.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Anybody in the audience, would you like to speak on this? Nobody? Okay. So being that there is no more discussion, so I see the discussion as concluded, and so it has been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember White to approve the request for sole source purchase of Okanite 15 kV underground primary distribution cable in an amount not to exceed $150. What? $150,000, sorry. All for?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Passes 5-0. Now we are on to item 6D, our last item of the evening. This is on page 95. This is ordinance 2080-24. If Planning Manager Stallnecker would like to give some details.
Thank you. So this was carried over from the last meeting. I didn't know if, because this is such a large document and there's a couple members missing, if it was just up for discussion at this meeting, or if there was a desire to have action, if we want to have discussion and then see how people feel. Because this one was, like I said, was a carryover, so I wasn't 100% sure which, we were doing. So happy to go through it and have discussion, and then if, depending on what the council feels comfortable with, we could definitely move it to the next meeting for action, or we could do it tonight, so. Tonight is the second reading of the sign code amendments, or the amendments to Chapter 1750, which is the sign code regulations. There was was a few topics that were brought up at the last meeting that we're hoping to address. I want to thank the city attorney for being here. If there's any questions that he's able to help answer. We wanted to start with just dealing with the idea of the First Amendments. That was a big discussion item. So signs are a form of free speech that is protected by the First Amendment in the Constitution. There's multiple rulings on it. So the most recent one was probably not the most recent, but the one in 2015 was Reed versus the Town of Gilbert, and that's the last time the city updated their sign code. And that dealt with the idea that there had to be, when you were regulating signs, it had to be content neutral. So you were allowed to regulate in other areas, but you couldn't consider the content. And so the factors that you are allowed to consider is time, place, or manner. So location, whether it's commercial or residential location, zoning districts, is it in the right of way, reasonable on-off premise distinctions, dimensions, type of structure, materials, the number of signs, maximum square footage, whether it's illuminated or not, fixed signs, changing message signs, moving parts, portability, the condition of signs. Those are all things that you are allowed to regulate by the Supreme Court. As long as, which is, you don't strike it all down. So back in 1994, there was the city of Lado versus Galileo, where the Supreme Court did strike down their sign code in residential sign, in the residential district. All they allowed was basically an identification or for sale signs. And the Supreme Court said that that was basically, it prevented any other type of sign, and that was too far. So again, there's that idea that there has to be sort of that balance that you can regulate, but you can't ban everything. So there's that balance there. I'm going to basically we'll go through the changes that I made based on the last meeting. The freedom of speech, kind of private property, is actually the last one, but I'll kind of mention it here, and then we'll come back and we'll end with that one as well. And so what I did do is one of the examples that was provided to me that was out of the city of Seattle is what I used as sort of the model, where it limits the size. Basically, you have a maximum size of 8 square feet, whether that's one sign, 2 signs, or three signs, as long as the total, when you add them up, is 8 square feet. There's no limit on that. So when we get to that section, we'll kind of break down again what's allowed in the residential section. But we're going to start on page 104. And like I said, we'll just quickly go through the changes that I made based on what I heard from the last meeting. So on page 104, we kind of expanded the definition for traffic control devices, just to make it, I did look at the manual for unified traffic control devices and tried to mimic some of their language. And then also added language from for traffic island, again, using the manual for uniform traffic control devices. So traffic island will basically includes anything that's median, roundabout, other infrastructure element designed to control vehicle movement as defined in the manual. So both of those tie back to something that's used in the industry. And then 107, there was comments made that in dealing with signs that sort of look like government signs, traffic control signs. And so another benefit for kind of simplifying this is if you just use certain words, people will try to argue, well, I didn't use the word that was in here, so it's okay. So instead, it just simply says signs placed without government authorization that resemble, interfere with, or are confused with traffic control devices as identified in the manual on uniform traffic control devices. And this is under the prohibited section. So those signs, so instead of saying certain words, basically, if it's not been authorized, and that gives some flexibility if the city's okay with, signs that say children at play. It's a little thing, it gives us a little bit of flexibility. But it also allows us the authority to, we've had signs that people put out that look like construction signs. We had some at Halloween, and we started getting calls because people would slow down thinking it was a construction sign and it was a Halloween decoration. So it gives us the ability to prevent that. And then on 108, there was discussion about the RCW. There's a couple different parts of the RCW that deal with obscene matter. I looked, other codes had the reference we had, but I did feel like adding the definitions would help on that, so I added that as well. And then on page 113, there was a request for the idea of when you're doing the temporary signs in the right-of-way to sort of not have them obscuring. And so we copied the language from the other section that just says signs must not obscure the view of other signs that are consistent with this chapter. So that allows us, it allows the city, if someone is purposely blocking other people's signs, sandwiching someone else's signs, it gives us the authority with this to say, stop. And then finally on 124, so we changed number 7. Previously, it had a limit of 90 days with 24 by 36 inches. So we've changed it to say yard signs and wall signs not exceeding 8 square feet of total signage are permitted on all residential properties without time limits. So if somebody wanted just whatever sign or 2 signs, as long as they're within that 8 square feet of total signage, they can have it for as long as they want. And then number 8 states that says all other temporary signs on private property are limited to a maximum of 90 days. So if they want to have something really big for a birthday or a graduation, they can have it for 90 days. It helps control, again, there's that balance of the individual free speech, but the neighborhood clutter visual of not allowing someone to have signs all over their property or very large signs all over their property. So it allows special things for 90 days, but if you want something up all the time, it allows that. So it's trying to find that balance. So with that, I'll open it up to questions or discussions. And again, Andrew is here if there's specific questions that he can help us answer.
We'll need a motion to.
Do you want to pass it tonight or do you want to just have discussion?
I think maybe we should wait for the other council members to weigh in on it as well. So I think that would be prudent.
Would that be a postponement?
So you can have discussion tonight.
Discussion,
We
okay.
can have discussion tonight and we'll just put it on the agenda for the next meeting for action.
So you can go, okay.
I think
No,
you were
I got it,
first.
but there's a mic.
I have a question on the last conversation we had with between the yard sign and a temporary sign. What's the difference between the two?
So the idea of using the term yard sign, it's the idea that it's on private property.
So, okay, I see. So the yard sign means private property, all other sign, but then the other one says all temporary signs on private property.
Where, yeah, so let's see, 124.
Yeah, residential property and we have private property.
So that's because no, that's because it was just written that way originally, not sure why. So basically private property or residential. So private property could be residential or commercial. So it would include any property where residential is specifically in the residential districts. So sorry, I had to think that through.
So a yard sign would be something that's more permanent?
It wouldn't have to be. It's just, so the idea of, in this case, of saying yard sign and wall sign is it's something that's in your yard. So you would stake it in the ground or maybe it's on a hook or something.
Right.
where, and then wall sign being you could hang something on your wall or on your garage or something. So it was just sort of the idea that something that in your yard or something on your house in a residential zone. So it's not necessarily saying what it looks like.
I think I'm stuck because I'm seeing the same thing with two different terms, I guess.
You pay.
Where I guess temporary signs could be a banner, could be counted in the ground, could be, again, because it's, because it says any private property, it could be things for commercial as well. So it includes it could include stuff other than yard signs, which could be, again, it kind of falls into, could be, like I said, I'm thinking of banners. It could be I assume for sale sign. I guess obviously if it goes beyond 90 days, then it might kick into something else, but it just leaves it, I guess it's intended to be sort of
Broad.
all in a little more broader.
I could see where a resident could argue between the two to which one they wanted.
I guess the idea is if it's beyond the 8 square feet, then it falls into the 90 days. So if they wanted something, so number 7 is saying the sign that you can have without time limits, you're limited to a total signage, maximum signage of 8 square feet.
Right.
So if you wanted anything bigger than that, more than that, then whatever's over that 8 square feet is limited to 90 days.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, light came on, got it.
Like I said, it's a lot of little stuff to take in, so.
Way back on page 99, at the top, just the definitions. And it's not mainly on the definition, it's more just pertaining to abandoned signs. So they have 6 months to either repair the sign or remove it. Just in my perspective, that's an awful long period of time.
What do you
So
think would be a,
Well,
a
it's
re-
just, I just think just personally, just my opinion is
Yeah.
6 months is an awfully long period of time for a dilapidated sign to be able to just sit there without being repaired or at least removed.
yeah, I agree. I think we could shorten that. What a-
Yeah, it's 180 days because that was the previous language, so I wasn't, but other than we added the second half, but there's no magic number, so.
Do you know what other cities have done with that at all?
They're probably all in that range.
Okay, okay.
Let me see, I'm trying to think what's the different. Yeah, so I mean, we could make them all 90 days.
I think that's ample.
the
90
only
days
thing
is
I didn't-
is 3 months, so
Yeah, that's the only thing I had an issue
yeah,
with.
I don't think that's unrealistic.
And again, it's usually from when we become aware of it, so.
Yeah.
Is there consensus on that?
Yeah,
Change it?
Do you have an opinion on that?
Since I'm here.
Are you gonna ask, you're an attorney here, I wanna ask the
Yeah.
attorney.
The planning manager Stolnecker is correct. There's no magic number. I don't think we necessarily need to reduce it to an absurdly low amount. I did just quickly pull up the Edgewood Municipal Code since they are our neighbor. They have almost identical language at 180 days and 90 days. But if council wishes to reduce it from 180 days, perhaps to 150, what's that, 30 days less or so, I think that may be reasonable. So I think as long as it's just not an unreasonably low amount, that should be fine.
Yeah, I think for continuity, we should kind of mirror what's around us or with our other cities, I think would be a good idea.
I have just a couple of questions. And while Andrew is talking, I'm going to ask Andrew a question. The wire holders that people stick in the ground and put in their campaign signs or their for sale signs and so forth, I believe Edgewood has banned them. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. So is it bannable? Because they're hazardous at times if they're bent over or the sign's taken off of it and so forth. And I believe that that's why Edgewood had banned them. Now, they may have changed, but I don't know.
That's an excellent question. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with that regulation from Edgewood. Or you said, is that Edgewood, correct?
Well, it was Edgewood, because I talked to somebody who was running for office last time, not this time, last time and so forth. And I was told by that individual running that Edgewood banned the wires, the two wires you stick in the ground and so forth. And if you looked at Edgewood, even this year, that was a common theme. They were all on sticks.
I mean, that is a fascinating, from an academic perspective, regulation because, you know, on one hand, those types of signs are very common for campaign signs and whatnot. So we need to be careful not to, you know, abridge or overregulate that. But on the other hand, there is an argument to be made perhaps about safety. You know, these things might be a safety hazard. You know, I actually do know the Edgewood city attorney, so I might reach out to her and kind of discuss that if there's interest in the council. But I suppose my roundabout answer is, at this point, I'm not entirely sure if that regulation would be constitutionally permissible, but I'd be happy to look into that for council. So.
I would appreciate it, and I think the council might, because it has come up in the question and wasn't sure about a legal answer.
I can add that it doesn't pertain to the legal aspects of it, but Planning Commission did discuss that, and the majority felt that because they were commonly used, as long as they were appropriately stuck in the ground, they decided not to prohibit those. That was their recommendation, with the idea that if people don't stick them in the ground appropriately and they fall over, we would just take them.
Commonly used does not mean it's legal, or it cannot be banned.
No,
There's
and
a
I'm
lot
not, I said, I'm not
Common things in
speaking.
life that people do that are against rules and regulations, just because people are common using them. It's not, I don't think, the best thing for the city of Milton or the citizens of
Right,
Milton.
and I'm not speaking to the legality of it. I just wanted to point out that it was discussed at the Planning Commission, and that was their recommendation.
We recently had a new coffee shop open, and they had 12 signs within 24 feet in the front of their property, in front of other people's property too, and so forth, to attract business. But that's a question I'd like to know an answer for, if you don't mind. Now, if I can continue a little bit, what I'm reading now in all the document is that everything in red is going to be in code. Everything with the strike through blue is out.
Correct.
A question for temporary signs. We have a building a lot being cleared on Milton Way and 26th, I think. It's going to be a Sherwin-Williams. There's a I'll call it a 4x6 or a 3x6 for sale sign on a temporary fence. Is that a legal sign?
Temporary signs are allowed on fences. Probably, but again, I'd have to,
Could you take a look at that one?
yeah.
Because it's just a little strange. Here's a piece of property that's just recently going into development with a rather large for sale sign on the property. There's a secondary sign with it, which is the builder's name, on their chain link fence. I'm just curious how they fit within this code. There was a question about buildings. Some offices and so forth. I'll pick one out right now, and it's Edgewood Veterinary Clinic. They occupy 3 of the sections in the corner of the Safeway parking lot. Very nice sign, very nice opening. The 2, what used to be other independent retail stores or whatever, are just covered over with, I don't know if it's cardboard or so forth. Because you don't want people to look in to see what the private business of somebody with their cat and dog and so forth are going on. And I totally agree with that. I'd like to find a way to incentivize them to have a mural up with cats and dogs as opposed to just, well, you know, covered over signs. Something similar to what Anytime Fitness has used. They've got about 8 or 10 windows that are very decorative. They're ones you can see through the different spots. They've got all the physical equipment and pseudo advertisement for their business. That's really nice. Edgewood Veterinarian has got 2 walls that are, you know, they look abandoned from the retail side. Just my question. And a third one, we have development coming into the city of Milton that's been under consideration for 5 or 6 months now. And they had a sign stuck on the property that says, coming soon, and their name. It got knocked down. Now it's back up. What is the regulation of some future advertisement? How long can that be up on the ground? And should it be limited to, say, 60 days before the development comes in, or can it be there for a year? That also occurred in a lot on Queens Street and Meridian. There was a sign up for a long time, and I think it was an Arco gas station, which still may be coming there. This is a little bit before your time, I think, even with the city. And it had coming soon, coming soon, coming soon. And it stood there for a long time. Is there a time constraint on that?
So under the new proposed code, let me grab it real quick. In most cases, it's going to be limited to 90 days. It is a challenge if something doesn't sell. But in this case, I suppose we could say, I guess you would say, of course, that talks about residential property. So in most cases, it's going to be 90 days. As to the vet windows, we currently do allow them if they are in such a situation where they're blocking windows for, we've written in that they can cover those. There's nothing in this code that dictates that they couldn't have signage or coverage of those windows. So that would be, if the majority of the council wanted that and there was consensus for that, we could develop something.
And I was asking that because we have something where if you have a store and you're selling, I can't find the pictures here right now. You can't advertise your business on the mural you put on the wall next to it, but you can have a mural. You can have happy dogs or happy cats, but you couldn't say Edgewood Veterinarian, too many signs. It's just something that would be nice to encourage people to do as opposed to just looking at that wall. That's actually, you can tell it's actually this one behind it. It's actually windows, which is cardboard or attractive cardboard. I'm not trying to be negative there. It just looks odd, and if there's some way we could encourage people to do it better, it might be nice. But I'm not unhappy with what I read. And I appreciate your time.
Anyone else?
Yeah, didn't we talk about not blocking windows on businesses so we could see through for safety reasons?
Yes, so,
Difference between that, because that you don't.
yeah, so there's a limit to windows that can have that can be covered with signage. But there was an exception for rooms that they can demonstrate are, that are for medical or vets, or maybe it's just storage or something. If it's the larger ones that it doesn't go to a public area, then they're allowed to cover the windows. Otherwise, they have to keep, I think they can only cover like 25% off the top of my head.
Yeah, because there's a business up there, and I've never walked in it because it's completely closed. I know what it is, but it's just
Yeah.
makes you wonder what goes on.
And from talking to the mayor, Some of this did come actually from the property management of some of those, the malls, the strip malls up there that they're kind of asking us to kind of have some guidelines and rules so that we can try to enforce that. So the plan will be, once this is adopted, that we will we will develop some handouts, letters that will go out to property owners. The mayor and I have also talked about just sort of going business to business, providing them with those information so that they're aware of what the new rules are, both for, for window signs, for portable signs, for temporary signs, so that everybody is aware of the rules before we start having to enforce them. And so we do have a plan in place to get the word out to all of the businesses so that they're not just all of a sudden getting notices that they didn't know were coming, so.
And to kind of follow up with that, I won't walk into business without seeing what's in there. It's just,
And
I
that's-
don't,
yeah.
maybe,
And that's what the studies show, that, business, the consultants and those that do studies on areas that do well economically, you can see in the windows. People, and as especially the uptown districts that we're hoping people will walk from business to business, people need to see inside and they're more likely to go in. It helps them. And it also does the opposite. If we have businesses that we feel are hiding, this will help deter some of that.
Page 100, under definitions, event or happening. What happening, is that, it sounds like jargon to me.
It's an attempt to, basically we're saying there has to be a date attached to it. So it's just, and that's, again, some of that's what was in the code that that didn't have a definition, but those phrasing was worded. So that's why we're defining it, that an event or happening, again, maybe events significant enough, but that's the terminology that's been used through it. But that's why we're defining, is the idea that it has to be limited duration. There's a start time, there's a stop time. It has to be tied. You can't just advertise your business, but you could advertise a special event or a special happening.
Yeah, it just seems
It might be old-fashioned,
unnecessary.
I know.
I
It could
mean,
be.
it's event, I mean, it's basically mean the same thing, right? Yeah, I don't see it necessary.
Woodstock was an event.
Yeah, it hits me weird. Oh, what's happening? Anyways, yeah.
Is there any more discussion?
Well, just out of curiosity, just to be sure, the issue is on page 95 did see this as the first reading, so we have to have it.
It's actually the second reading, I apologize. It's on the agenda correctly. When we had the public hearing, that was the first reading, so that's my fault.
Well, that's, and not to criticize that, it legitimizes it for the next reading. Any questions?
So is there's any consensus direction other than bring this back?
Yeah,
Yeah.
get the consensus that,
yeah.
to bring it back. And that would be like at the next, not the next meeting, that would be study session following meeting? Okay,
Do we need a motion? Okay.
we just move it to, all right.
Yes.
And now we're on to council reports.
19.
And I guess I go first. My only thing for me personally is that it was a real honor to be able to preside over this meeting. It's kind of cool, an interesting experience, let me just say. And I thank you all for the honor and the privilege to be able to do it. And that's all I have. So I guess we would go on to Mr. Preddy, who isn't here. So we go to, Mr. White, sorry. Councilmember White, sorry.
Well, it's not lost on me that the person that usually seconds items on the agenda wasn't here to do it tonight. So I was happy to step up and do that on your behalf. But other than that, I have nothing.
You're good?
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Strader.
I just want to thank all those who came forward today and all in the audience to participate in this process that we have here with the city. And I want to thank you for coming. Thank you.
Councilmember Hall.
I would like to thank our police department for monitoring our streets. I see some cars being pulled over for speeding and stop signs. But we've got some donuts going on over by the sports court. Yes. And I know we have a few off-road vehicles being driven around. And the tires marks look very similar to those ones that are up there, and you know where they are. But they're damaged, the grass.
Councilmember Whalen.
Oh, okay, a couple of things. For the month of March, we're scheduled our 3 meetings, and they're all listed as no chief. Will we have a representative from the police department? Will Wade possibly be here? Okay, I did. So there will be a chief, even though it's an assistant.
I'll be on vacation.
I've had the opportunity, of course, with as many years on council, I can't tell you how many years I've been on council committees. And I greatly appreciate it. I've learned a lot. I've been on the finance committee, I think, at least 15 years. I'm going to ask to change the committee I'm on. I want to ask the council, I want to be Public Works, Community Development, and Public Safety Committee, which is listed in our code. This is the second committee that we're listed in. And I'd like the opportunity. I'm not particularly looking for a vote or anything on it tonight. I'm just informing you that I think the Finance Committee, there's a lot of opportunity for other folks who haven't served 15 years or something on it. And I think there's a lot of opportunity now to finally open up the second committee that we're privileged to have within our policies. And I'd like consideration for it. I talked too much, I can't remember what I was going to say. No, just appreciate. I'm going to ask one other favor, if it's possible. Nothing has to change on our development project statuses now. But there's a lot of these things that are 4 years old, and it's hard to see what progress is being made, like what changes. And we have Surprise Lake Housing, Surprise Lake Homes, and I know where they are. I know what's going on in there and so forth. But I think the last time we saw something on here was written in 2019. I don't know if there's anything else that can go towards the development, because I'm asked by folks, what's going on there? I don't see anything happening. Something to possibly talk about in the near future. How to better inform the council, the public, whoever else reads them on that report. So, other than that, I don't know. Hope the weather gets warmer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Council reports. You were just sitting back there in the audience, but out of courtesy, yeah. Do you want to come up to the? Yeah. Do you have anything? Okay. Director Madden. Director Stolnecker.
No, I do not.
The chief.
Well, not much to report other than that things continue to be the same. Cars continue to be stolen. Our violence still continues to be on the rise. Drive-by shootings, road ragings continue to be more frequent than they were and continue to go up. There is some legislation they're working on, and so hopefully, but the legislation session is almost over. And so hopefully we'll see some new legislation. Our newest officer, Josh Conrad, you might see him around the city. So we're fully staffed again. He replaced Officer Johnson. Not that you can replace him, but he has big shoes to fill. But he is going through probation. And again, just to give you an example, we had a giant backhoe that was in the parking lot of Umpqua Bank up there. And it was pretty obvious their intent was they were going to knock down the ATM machine and take it. So that's, again, if you see something, say something that doesn't seem normal. We were called by the bank because the thing was in the parking lot running. So they got spooked probably by a patrol officer and ran off. But so anyways, again, if you see something, say something. We cannot do this job without citizen participation. And so I feel that we are effective, but we have limitations on our abilities to pursue criminals for property crimes and so forth. But again, it's about preservation of a way of life. So if you see something, say something. And again, the police department and I certainly appreciate the level of cooperation and love that we get from this city and its citizens.
Thank you. The mayor wanted, as the mayor's report, representing the mayor, she wanted to let everybody know that she emailed all the council members regarding the council retreat on March 29th, and that she asked that everyone respond. And seeing that all agenda items have been concluded, I adjourn this. Oh,
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt and so forth. I want to meet Tipper. Maybe bring him to council some nights.
Yes, I will make it a point for you guys to meet our drug dog and our drug officer if you haven't met him. He was at Trunk or Treat. The dog was at Trunk or Treat as well. But that duo, Officer Wilcox and his dog, have taken thousands and thousands and thousands of fentanyl pills off the street. That's why, if you read the newsletter, he was Officer of the Year, because he is the highest performing officer in the department, and a lot of it goes to his partner in crime, which is his dog. So they're doing a great job.
And I wanted to compliment the newsletter for providing the information to the citizens, the officers. So, thank you.
And again, you'll see an escalation in our baseball card program where we're going to encourage young people to come and get a card during the summer months, and we're going to work out something with Sundays at a restaurant in the city. You get a card? Yeah. You get it Sunday.
you have something?
No,
else?
no, I'm good.
So seeing that all agenda items have been concluded, I adjourn this meeting at 8:19 p.m.